I don't know if you saw this or heard this, but I just heard, I didn't hear, it wasn't a story, it was a letter that someone sent me that I had never read before. And one of the early initiations in Russia, and somehow Prabhupada felt that they wouldn't be read, if we told them to follow regular principles, they may not come. So he was actually allowing them to be initiated without vowing to follow the four principles. Any of you know that? No. Not that he followed that, but he said in the letter, the leader there, basically, they may not be ready for this, and I don't want to dissuade them from coming to Krishna consciousness. He said, but just get them to chant 16 rounds. If they do that, then they'll naturally follow the principles. But there's even one more drastic story than that. I don't think anybody knows this. I believe this took place at the time Prabhupada took sannyas. So I think it was 1959, something around then. And he said that he was planning to go to the West and that he would feed them meat and alcohol if necessary. That's, yes. Yeah.
They spend so many lives doing nonsense. If they'll come and hear Bhagavatam and give them meat.
That's where Prabhupada got the idea, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was willing to do it. And then Prabhupada said the same thing. He said, I'll serve them meat, alcohol, whatever, but I will get them to chant, and when they chant, then they'll give up the meat and alcohol. So there's another principle that Prabhupada said. He actually gave a definition of what it means to teach Krishna consciousness. He said, find the spark and fan it. So let's say, we're all conditioned, but that conditioning is just, it's not really, how do we say? We all know it. It's not like when you were 6 years old, you said, my goal in life is to eat meat and drink alcohol. It's just, it's culturally, it's just social environment. That's what people do. But that's so much. So you can have a person who's doing all those things, but has a sincere desire to be Krishna conscious, and they come in touch with the devotees and they give it all up. There's another interesting thing. One time Prabhupada said, he said, all of you are coming, you all were associates of Lord Chaitanya. It's like the devotees. They couldn't believe that. He said, but Prabhupada, we were doing all sinful things before you came. And he said, that was all external. As soon as you heard the holy name, you came running. So he pushed that off. And another thing from a philosophical perspective, I was just thinking an interesting question. If Krishna said, you have to do these two things, I'm going to make you do one or the other. Which one is it? And he gives you a choice. You could blaspheme a Vaishnava, or you could break one of the principles. Which one would you choose? Not because you want to, but because that's so less harmful for your spiritual life, because it's external. It's not, where committing an offense to a Vaishnava will eat away at the root of your bhakti creeper. Where one chanting of Hare Krishna, the sin that you've committed, it's gone. So the sin doesn't stain the soul, it's external. So now this is interesting because what we learn from this is that Prabhupada, by his own realization, had this deep faith in the holy name, that it would could purify anyone who takes it. And therefore he didn't care what you were doing, just come. And so the devotees, people would come, 22nd Avenue, they would listen to the class, then they would go out and smoke, or they'd go out and smoke after the kirtan, then come back, listen to the class. And so Prabhupada was very tolerant in those days. because he knew that if they just chant and they're just encouraged, they'll go on. So one of the things that Prabhupada did was like find the spark in the soul and fan it. You have some desire. What's that spark? Well, I see a little desire. You want to serve Krishna. Oh, come. What would you like to do? You like to sing? Trish, yeah. I like to sing. Okay, sing for Krishna. Janaki, you like to paint? I like to paint. Paint for Krishna. It's like whatever. You like to, talk to people. Yeah, talk to them about Krishna. Whatever you like to do, find that spark, fan it, encourage people. So that's what Prabhupada did. And if you went through all of Prabhupada's letters to find themes, that theme would definitely come out. The encouragement, he was always encouraging. And he would say things like, I'm very, very happy with what you're doing, please continue. To encourage them, because Maya is saying, no, don't do bhakti. You're giving up so much. You could go out and, you could be rich, famous, and you could enjoy this and that. You've given that up. And so Prabhupada was always having to do the opposite, because Maya was also encouraging, right? Maya's trying to pour water on the spark, and Prabhupada's trying to fan the flame she's putting in. So Prabhupada was always fanning with the words like, I'm very happy, please continue. That's very encouraging, like that. We needed that. But he was doing that because he had faith in the process in the holy name. There one time, devotees were asking in the early days about how to do deity worship, and Prabhupada established a very simple standard, and they wanted to know more. And he said, well, if I told you everything, you'd faint. And still, we don't do everything, but there's like so many things you could do to do puja. You can't walk this way before 7 o'clock, and before 7:05, you got to be on that side. And you took more than 3 drops of water, now go take a bath. It's like, so he didn't tell us all those things. It wasn't necessary, but when he introduced it, he did it slowly. So he sometimes in the early days would introduce things slowly, just according to what we could understand, and not to like confuse us or discourage us. So now I think inherent in your question is, how do we imbibe that mood also, that we don't discourage some? How dare you? Look what you did. Get out of here, you lowly being. That is, whenever you find yourself thinking, feeling, or acting in ways which don't coincide with how a devotee should think, feel, or act, that's just your conditioning. And so you just have to be aware, you have to catch it and go, get rid of this guy, beat him up. Wait a minute, why am I feeling that way? Well, he came in the temple with his shoes on. Like, you want to beat him up for that? That's offensive. So, we might think it's coming from devotion, and sometimes it may, especially if he's attacking devotees and you attack him. You have to prevent that. But if it's just like an innocent mistake, or he's just an ordinary person, that's what ordinary people do, and you get very angry, you should be careful to think that's my bhakti getting angry at him. It's probably your conditioning. But we kind of tell ourselves, no, it's the temple, and et cetera, et cetera. But whenever you're acting in ways which you could not substantiate through the 26 qualities of a devotee, it has to be conditioned. It can't be. In rare circumstances, of course. You may have to do something that doesn't look like bhakti. Devotees are being, attacked. And so the strong guys, the martial artists, to go out and do your thing. But other than that, you have no reason to do it. So, so there's this gray area, right, between my conditioned self and what I think is bhakti, and I'm doing it for Krishna. Where does it end? Go steal for Krishna. Yeah, I used to steal before I was a devotee, and why not employ it in Krishna service? We need money, it's like it all belongs to Krishna anyway. All these people have stolen his money, we should have it all. Yeah, Prabhu, yeah, it's right there, that verse right there. Yeah, go out, rob every bank in Gainesville. The next day, Hare Krishna monks robbed 6 banks in Gainesville. So you think Prabhupada's going to be happy? You know? So in rare circumstances, that could be justified, but those circumstances are extremely rare. But we tend to justify it, and we don't make a distinction between my conditioning and rationalization that I should do it and what is actually bhakti. So it's good to know that and catch yourself. And then the other thing is that Prabhupada said, he said, when a devotee was kind of doing what you kind of hinted at, we feel like doing when we see somebody not acting properly. And Prabhupada said, how many months ago were you doing that? So like, 6 months ago, you did the same thing, like you're no great saint, And 6 months from now, you could be doing the same thing also. It's not like you can't. So, you could call that compassion, that people are struggling. People don't always know what's right and wrong. We did so many stupid things. So we should be tolerant. And a lot of times, devotees will say, it was the tolerance of the devotees. They tolerated me for so many years. And if they didn't, I wouldn't be a devotee. And we could say that about Prabhupada. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the movement, the standards were very low in the beginning. And then as we advanced, he tightened the ropes. But the first initiation, devotees, I don't think they knew what the regular principles were until after the initiation. I don't think they took any vows, something like that. I think Jadharani was initiated in jeans and a t-shirt. There was no, it was just Prabhupada was just letting them, do whatever they do, but just add Krishna. And then slowly. Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to ask because Hare Krishna. You just mentioned how in the beginning the standards were very low and they've become higher and higher and higher. But the thing is that the level of the devotees who are coming to the movement is the same as it was then or lower. So now we have people coming from a lower beginning, having to come very quickly to a higher standard. Yeah. So sometimes we wonder why not many devotees are joining these days. Could have something to do with it.
Yeah. I think there's 2 points. That point is valid, but they're also coming into an organization which is much different, where you have groups of people who are on a higher standard. So it makes it easier. So I would say it's kind of like both now. We adopt Prabhupada's mood, but at the same time, it's easier for people to come up because the whole standard is higher. And Prabhupada, he didn't have a society with a higher standard, so he had to start from zero. But in one sense, people may be worse off now. I don't know. That was a pretty degraded time. I mean, some people were taking LSD every day, like 7 days a week. That's what they were doing. And that article, or I think it was Allen Ginsberg, he said, well, the Krishna temple is a good place to go in the morning after you come down from LSD. What were his words? I kind of like to land, in a safe place. Re-entry. Yeah. I forgot all the lingo. Yeah. It's better I forget it. Re-entry. So, it was, and philosophically speaking, it was pretty wild. And that was that's 1965. The thing is, when something starts like that revolution, it tends to be worse than it, because it's new and everybody just jumps into it. So free love, you can say now we have free love, but I think it was worse than, from my experience. I mean, I don't want to tell you what it was like, because this is a temple, but yeah, it was pretty bad. So, what I'm saying? When there's like, you're making this 180-degree shift, And everybody's like exploiting it because, oh, our parents are so conservative and uptight. So, but it seems to me the basic difference is there's an organization where you can look at and go, here's a standard, but it doesn't mean, like you're saying, everybody has to fit their piece in the puzzle. They cannot be shaped right to fit in the puzzle at this point, and gradually by coming, they will fit in. The thing is that Prabhupada's strategy, and he said this, he said, you can't force people to do anything, but you can only teach them what is right and let them decide that that's what they want to do. Like, come to the temple, it's, all new people, and say, so we get up at 4 o'clock and then we sleep on the floor. Well, we don't do this anymore, but in those days, we sleep on the floor, nothing, just a sleeping bag on the floor. The latest we'd get up is at 4, and there's no hot water. You take a cold shower and you come in the temple. And from 4:30, basically at 8:30 or 9, you're either chanting or reading. So is that what you tell the new people? Come. Why don't you just join us? It's so cool. We sleep on the floor. You'll love it. And, a room with like 25 men right next to one another. It's ecstatic. And then we get up between 3 and 4 and we take these ice cold showers. You've never experienced any bliss like that before. And then we come and sit and meditate, study scripture for 4 hours. So you will get a few people and say, this is what I'm looking for. They will be, there's no question. But what did Prabhupada say? You don't have to shave your head. You don't have to wear robes, just chant Hare Krishna. An interesting thing is, after they became initiated devotees, he said the same thing. You don't have to do these things. So it wasn't like just propaganda, but he was always saying it. But seemed to me Prabhupada's program was just engage people and let them evolve naturally by hearing and chanting. We have a group called Sattva Life, and we have a document that I created a document that outlines the culture of our preaching, and that's one of the principles. That very thing. Do not judge people. Be their mentor, be their guide, and all decisions for advancement will come naturally from them. Don't push them or force them, because when you push or force, it's like a rubber band, it'll either break or it'll just come back to where it was. It has to be done by themselves. I mean, we should have learned at least that much after all these years, right? And so many people take up Krishna consciousness, but they shoot for it. They try to go too high, too fast. And they, tear a ligament, so to speak. Now they're limping around, spiritually limping around because they went ran too fast without stretching. So that's quite common. So we learn from these things. Is that okay? Or you want to say?
I think in some ways, like maybe people are. I just feel like, Kali Yuga is progressing and the situation in the world is like, maybe people are not doing the same types of things as they were back then. So it doesn't look so bad, but there's a lot of really messed up stuff and mental health problems.
So then to address that specific point, especially psychologically messed up, the hippies weren't so psychologically messed up until they took their LSD. And the wires in their brain got separated or something. But it still really wasn't a psychological problem. It's just kind of some damage for some people. But most people were fairly together and successful, otherwise and intelligent. So accepting people where they're at with their problems, not judging them. I think that's what you're getting at, right? No. At least as far as, I mean, there's another problem, because if people have serious mental problems, we may not be able to help them. And to say that we can would be not good. So, come join the temple, but they actually they might need to have some kind of psychological help. And in worst case scenario, be in a mental institution. In some cases, that's rare, but sometimes we've seen that people are not in a good mental state, and the devotees try to help them, but the devotees aren't therapists, so they can only help them so far. We can help them in Krishna consciousness, but that doesn't always solve every trauma and so forth they've been through. So at least they should know that, because then you have the problem that they're disturbed, they disturb others.
I was also thinking, just in terms of like when I joined in London in '92, and it was just very easy to move into the temple, and from wherever you are, you could just move in the temple as long as you were interested and wanted to learn. And I was and like now, like after 20 years, if I go back to London and see the situation and people are coming and what they need to do to move into the ashram, it's like I wouldn't be a devotee if the situation as it is now is what it was then.
But that's British. That's very British. Right? Answer 108 questions, and then we'll consider it 3 weeks later. There's some things here I have to talk to you about. That's much more British, right?
On a level of like full surrender before you move in.
Yeah. You want to get initiated in England? Oh my God. It's really hard. There's a lot of boxes to check. Aren't you lucky you don't live in England? Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Christina wanted to say something. Yeah. So, no, I think there's a balance between both, right? We want to encourage people, and we want to be patient, tolerant, compassionate, and everything. But we want to make sure we can actually help them. We want to make sure they're not going to disrupt the sanity of the ashram. Other than that, yeah. But the more tolerant we are, more compassionate we are, the more those people can be healed. And if we're too impatient, then get this person out of the ashram, they're driving everybody crazy. Maybe we're a little crazy also, and we can't tolerate it. So both takes two to tango. Yes, Christina.
Hare Krishna. Actually, kind of going on along the same lines, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the evolution of the ashram and how, well, my understanding is, back in like the 60s, right, all the ashrams were basically the same because everything was new. And so it was all for Westerners, and it was all, very new people, and, people packed like sardines and taking ice cold showers and loving it and that kind of thing. And then it seems like a lot of temples lost ashrams in the past few decades. And now, at least in my experience, having visited a few ashrams, it seems like there are very different types. Like there's Krishna House, which is very kind of liberal and open to new Westerners who are kind of just coming up. And then there are ashrams where it's just like much more strict and much more like, oh, you really need to know your stuff before living there. Yeah. So I was just wondering if you could kind of comment on that and like what the role of the ashram is now.
It's going to depend on the leadership also of what they want to create. But you can do a little history. When Prabhupada came at an interesting time, because I don't know if this was ever spoken of amongst the hippies. This is just what I observed, that during those times in the 60s, if you ascribe to something, then you just did it, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be like on the sideline saying, oh, I like that. That's good. I give my stamp of approval and I go to rallies. No, you would be involved in like creating the rally. You would, so it's like whatever you did, they were very detached then. You would just, this is what I want to do. You drop out of everything. That was the mood. tune in, turn on, and drop out. So that's why so many people join the ashram, because if it made sense to you, and the whole hippie philosophy was rejection of material values. If it made sense to you, then that's what you would do, because everybody was looking for some truth. They weren't looking to get a job and pursue a career. So if you're not looking for a job and a career, and then you find what you're, a movement, a mission, you just dedicate yourself to it. Someone might join the army, same idea. So that's why the ashrams were so popular, because you could just tell you'd speak to someone and say, so do you believe it? And they'd say, yeah. And said, so what are you going to do? You believe it. So why don't you move in? And they couldn't say anything, because that was just the culture. If you believed it and you didn't do it, and I said, so if you believe it, why aren't you doing it? You couldn't say, well, I want to pursue this and that, because that, in that culture, that would be totally hypocritical. So, so Prabhupada established ashrams. He established a program. He wanted everyone to be up early, Mangal Arati at 4:30, chant 16 rounds. That was the standard. So, if you were in that culture and you met Prabhupada, like, no problem. It's just like, okay, we move the ashram. What time do we get up? 4 o'clock, 3 if you want. Okay. Cold shower. Okay. It was just like, it was so, okay, this is what we do. And it was so exciting. And we're pushing, we're like right in the beginning of creating a movement. And that's so exciting, isn't it? You're just starting something and you see it expanding and you see where it's going to go. And you realize you're at ground zero of this movement that has the potential to completely change the world. So like, what's getting up at 4 in a cold shower and sleeping on the floor? That's like nothing, Didn't even think about it. And when I first went to South Africa, it was 1981, and they were sleeping on mats just like that. They had these mats in South Africa. They fold up, and they would lay them out that thick, and they would sleep on them. And you know what I thought? That all these brahmacharis are in Maya. They're sleeping on a mat. That's what I seriously thought. It was like that. I said, why are you sleeping on a mat? That's so much Maya.
We just put our sorry that we had won that day on the floor.
Yeah. So, but nobody had a problem with it. Prabhupada was here, and it was like, can't describe what it's like, but you could imagine. So, and most of the men, not the women so much, but most of the men in the ashrams wanted to remain brahmachari. That was the mood then. That's what if you talk to them, are you going to get married? Most would say, like 70% might say, no, I'll remain brahmachari. That's what I want to do. Not that we didn't have grihastas. And the grihastas were living like they didn't have furniture in their homes. They'd live, like 1-bedroom apartment. They'd also sleep on the floor. So the grihastas were living a bit like brahmacharis, and many of them were working full-time for the temple. So they didn't have, I would say, in the temples I was in, 90+% of the grihastas were full-time devotees. They go on Sankirtan, like we bought a house, you can live there. Like, kind of like here, do service. So each grihasta had a room. And nothing in the room, just a room. Roll out your sleeping bag, just like you did in the brahmachari ashram. Now you just do it as grihasta. It was like, all right, whatever. Nobody was complaining. And then we upgraded to like 1-bedroom apartments. We had our own place, had a kitchen, no furniture. Like, why would you need furniture? You're gone doing service all day, and you just come home and lay your sleeping bag, and so it was kind of pervaded the whole mood. And then after Prabhupada left, things changed, because a few years after Prabhupada left, you didn't have that same energy from Prabhupada's presence. And that was the time that most men were like 3 years after Prabhupada left, were in their 30s now. And so when they hit that age, then a lot of them, without Prabhupada being present, the movement had changed. And at that age, we're thinking I should get married. And then most of them got married. And most of them worked. The temples couldn't support all of them. And so as that was happening, if you have less and less people in the temple, it becomes harder and harder to attract new people to the temple because there's nobody out now. So gradually there were less and less, because all the men and women got married, they had to support themselves. We had less people going out. So it was a shift, less people going out, less people coming. And then it got to the point, at some point, that some temples had nobody living in the temple anymore. Or just the pujaris lived in the temple. So, and then society changed. So you had those two things. Society was changed. They're not hippies anymore. They went from hippies to yuppies, and then kind of into the yoga scene. And then basically what I saw was happening. It was very interesting for me to see this. I'd meet people like all over the world. And when you meet someone that's very interested in Krishna consciousness, you could kind of tell that if this person keeps coming, they'll be a devotee, because they're all the signs. They understand intellectually, they feel it. They're kind of already a devotee. But now what was happening is they were coming, and you would, if this was 1970, they would move in the ashram. But now they're coming and they're pursuing careers. And they're practicing Krishna consciousness at home. And in our generation, nobody did that, because we didn't think that we could pursue Krishna consciousness at home. We didn't think that was possible. Neither were we pursuing careers. So it was a different generation. Now these people are coming, they have some knowledge. A lot of people have knowledge, a lot of people are meditating. And so the consciousnesses add this to your life. For us, it was just one or the other. There was no middle. Very few people were in the middle. It was only the Indians. They were in the middle because they didn't think about living in ashrams, most of them. So now with that evolution, Kalakanta Prabhu's idea was, we're not, and this is also in the UK, they understood this, maybe many places. The idea of a person, brahmachari for life, if you do it statistically in America, you're maybe at 2% or something of those of men who, and you would say maybe 80, 70% were convinced this is what they're going to do. Of those 70, 80, only 2% were able to do it. So you have to look at that and say, okay. And so Kalakanta Prabhu was thinking that for us, living in the ashram was such an important experience to get that, because so many people now come to Krishna consciousness, they never live in an ashram. And sometimes I'll go to their home and I'll see them doing things. It's like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, what? This, what's wrong with that? You would learn that on their first day in the ashram, and they don't know it. And, you know, to have this, you know, going out, meeting people and living with devotees and all that experience, he felt like, let people have that experience for a year or two or three. You know, it's invaluable. And you don't have to say, this is what you're going to do for your life, because you're not going to do it anyway, even if you say you are. Only, you know, a few of you will. You know, we see a few brahmacharis, the sannyasis, but most people, no. And amongst women, extremely rare. So adaptation of society. Now people, and I saw this also, that I have to let, in my spirit preaching, I have to let people just come and find their place. We can't just put them in an environment. It's like, you know, we take you to Antarctica, it's too cold for you. You know, I like Florida. You know, take someone from Antarctica, it's too hot in Florida. It has to be the right environment. And if, let's say somebody moves here and they say, they're just like total monk consciousness. They're the sleep on the floor 4 a.m. Like what's stopping them from getting up at 4 a.m. and sleeping on the floor? Nothing. They'll do it. But the people who can't do that, they have a place where it's suitable. Well, I can't do that, but I could get up at 5 and sleep on the bed. Okay, what's the problem? You know, it's what you do when you're awake. That's the real thing. So it makes sense that you've just made the door a little wider open, but then it allows people to practice. And then in your life, you will decide how deeply you want to practice. after you leave the ashram. And the other thing we observed is that people who live in the ashram with a lower standard and people who live in an ashram with a higher standard, if you check them out 10 years, the ones who live with a higher standard are not necessarily better off, and sometimes they're worse off because it was like too high, and then they went, just to compensate, they went lower. So that happens also. For sure that happens. So, but you know, you have to have some standard, but you make a standard which is doable. And then if you individually want to increase your standard, you can chant more rounds, you can get up earlier, you can study more, you can do more, you can do all these things. There's no limit there. Now, if you go to India, it's a whole different ballgame, because a lot of young Indian men, not a lot, you grow up in India around, educated about sadhus and saints, and many young boys, you know, when they're young, they're thinking, that's what I want to do, you know, or they're not thinking that's what they want to do, but when they come in contact with the devotees, they start thinking that's what they want to do. And they were living in a sheltered environment, many of them, religious families. You know, religious family means you won't have girlfriends till your mother or father finds you one to marry. So they're coming in the ashram, they'd never had girlfriends. They were vegetarians all their life, their parents were doing puja. And it's like, this makes sense, I'll just do this, and they can do it. It's the culture. So you find an enormous amount of men who join the ashrams in India stay. They never leave, they never get married. If you look at all the sannyas candidates from the West, you know, he was married, he had a family, now he's 65, wants to take sannyas. If you look at the Indian sannyas candidates, none were married, 0. That's unusual, right? For all these men who never married, it's the culture. So to have it, a Krishna house in, you know, Chowpatty, it could have its place. They have their own version of it. You can work and live in the temple. But they have a strict brahmacharya ashram. They're all up. They're all sleeping on the floor in one big room with a little cubby like this. All your stuff's got to fit in this cubby. If it doesn't, you're not a brahmacharya. Last time I was there, I think they doubled the size of the cubby. It used to only be like this. Now you get 2 like this. I'm not sure why. Maybe keep all your books in one of them or something. But they live very austerely, because that's traditionally what brahmacharya life is, right? So to live that way for a while, for all of you who live here, you know, if you want to do more austerity, why not? It's good for you. If you can. If you can't, why be artificial? Right? Do what you can, and then you'll gradually evolve. Because at the end of the day, you are who you are. You're not somebody else, and you can't fake it. You can only lift, you can only do so many push-ups. You can only lift so many pounds, right? Oh, we'll lift 200 pounds a day. Really? And you go and then you break your back. So why don't you start with 20 pounds? See if you can handle that. You know, like, come to, you know, we have a program. I don't know if you do it here, but we have a program. We started a Bhakti program in San Diego in the 80s or something, or late 70s. Come over, stay overnight, see how you like it. You know, stay a weekend, like that, you know? So yeah, start with 20 pounds. If you like it, stay the next day, put on 10 more. You know, see if you like it. Get to the point where it's about as much as I can do. All right, do that. Because by doing that, in a few weeks, you can do more. Then you'll hit a point. You'll top off. I can only do 100 pounds, that's it. Okay, fine. Did that answer your question? Is that what you're, yeah. So we have learned a lot by just hindsight, seeing what happens. And we still have to learn, because society will change, you know. You know, some of you are too young to know this, but, or maybe you know anyway, but I was introduced to the straight edge movement. I didn't know anything about it in 1992, was it, or 93, I first learned about it. 4 regular principles, that was young kids, 15, 16, they follow their, I'm straight, you eat meat, drugs. I said, no, I'm straight edge. I don't do any of that. No sex, no drugs, no meat, nothing. It's like, so when that movement started, that was the place you'd go, and those boys would join and become brahmacharis. 4 a.m. on the floor, brahmacharis, no problem. That's what they were doing. We were hippies, 4 a.m. on the floor. What were we doing? We're sleeping, camping out in the forest, sleeping at our friend's house on the floor, Temple was an upgrade. A lot of village boys in India, they joined. Temple was a big upgrade, in a small room in their house, there were 10 people. They joined the ashram. There's only 5 people in the room that size. Upgrade. What?
And there's running water.
And running water, yeah. So, I think the real point of this discussion is not exactly what time we get up and all of that, although that is important. But for us personally, and for us in terms of spreading Krishna consciousness, the principle is give a person as much as they can digest. You eat as much as you can digest. If you eat too much, you get indigestion. If you don't eat enough, you'll be weak. Find what that right point is. And then from that right point, you'll go up. But if you try to go up too much or you're too low, and you could be higher, it's not good either way. So for you individually, if you master that yourself, then naturally that's how you'll deal with people. If you're a fanatic, you're going to try to make other people fanatics. It's just the way it is, right? You will tend to project on other people. So if you can be balanced inside, tolerant with yourself, understand your limitations, be more self-accepting, you'll be that way with other people. And then people will feel that, and they'll feel accepted, because everyone wants to be accepted. But if you're hard on yourself and always judging yourself, you'll tend to do that with others, and nobody wants to be judged. You don't want to be judged, and you judge yourself. Like, what's that all about? Right? Hare Krishna. We had another question in the back somewhere.
My question is on a different topic.
Okay.
So sometimes in our practice and spiritual life, there are phases where I feel naturally enthusiastic and there's a lot of determination. I naturally don't feel attracted to some of the allurements,
Yes.
and it's easy.
Yes.
And then I'm doing the same things that I'm doing, and yet it goes down, and the enthusiasm.
When the moon is
low.
full, is it when the moon is full?
Right. So, and the
It actually could be. I'm serious. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So with time, I'm doing the same things that I'm doing, and yet it goes, it goes down, or it fluctuates, the level of enthusiasm and determination, and then it's disturbing that.
Yes.
Why is it now tough? That was so easy a week before,
I think the best answer to your question is to not answer what you asked, but answer what to do when it happens, because it will happen. And like you're saying, I can't figure out why, because nothing changed, except maybe the stars, or you just entered your Venus period. I mean, there could be so many things. It could be, biological, the airs in your body are due to something you ate or some influence in the environment, and it's affecting your mind because there's more vata now, your mind's going, there's more pitta and you're like, you want to kill somebody. I once went to an Ayurvedic doctor, one of my disciples, and after he diagnosed me, we were just having fun. He said, put your hand on hers. And he did it. He said, fire. You have so much fire. Fire, means anger. You'll be very angry. And he said, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "I feel sorry for him." Serious. He was serious. So I was reading yesterday. I read this quote of Prabhupada, where he's talking about the mind and how we obviously think of things that we don't want to think of, or feel things we don't want to feel, which is basically what you're saying. And Prabhupada said, don't pay attention to it, ignore it. So I think that the point is not why it happens as much as what do we do when it happens. If, normally when someone asks a question, I would ask them, go back and trace your steps. Is there something you did? Maybe there is and you don't know it. But because you said, I'm doing the same thing, I didn't go there. Then I'm going to, okay, what do we do when it happens? Like, I can't prevent this in my condition. Let's assume in my conditioned state, I can't prevent it. That's the nature of being conditioned. The mode of passion just starts revving up its engine, and I feel passion, and I don't know why. Could have been I slept, 20 minutes too little or too long. I saw something and it, triggered something subconsciously. It could be so many things. The ability to remain steady in spite of this, that's what we have to learn. Because the problem is that the problem can be that we give in to those things. Say, well, my mind, why did you do that? Because my mind this, and I was feeling this, and I'm so weak, and I can't change, and all the list of excuses. So Prabhupada never taught us to process it that way. He always told us to process it like, tolerate it, remain determined no matter what, be enthusiastic, even if you're not, fake it, just keep pushing forward. So my best advice to everybody is to learn how to do that, because the other side will gradually subside if you do the positive side, because the positive side will get you through this mess, and your devotion won't be affected, and you'll become more Krishna conscious, which will solve the up and down. But if you keep giving in to the up and down when it comes, that's the problem. And we don't have time to get into how to do that. We could give a whole seminar on that, but you could also contemplate, okay, when all these things happen, how do I do it? And so there's a glory in struggling. Like, how are you doing, Prabhu? I'm struggling. So you say I'm struggling in a depressed way, and I respond, that's glorious. You're struggling. Why is it glorious? Because you haven't given up. Why are you struggling? Because you're a conditioned soul. And then you're going to have to struggle because your ideal is so high. It's going to be a struggle to get there, right? That's why you're struggling. So Krishna's looking at you, and now, the mode of passion or ignorance is pumping a little more than normal. And Krishna's looking at you, saying, okay, how are you going to respond to this? Are you going to tolerate it, or are you going to make an excuse and give into it? So if we use the word struggle, which is not such a warm and fuzzy word, but Krishna likes to see us struggle. And in fact, it's even possible sometimes that Krishna plants that in your brain. It's not in your heart. It's not even a samskar from the past. He plants it there, and it's like, have you ever felt like attracted to something? You're like, I was never attracted to that in my life. Why am I attracted now? I've thought that way. Or I feel envy. I said, I never felt this kind of envy before. Why? Maybe Krishna put it there just to see what are you going to do, or put it there so you could work on it, become stronger. Okay, how am I going to process this envy now? This devotee is agitating me. This situation is agitating me more than usual. Okay, whatever. What am I going to do now? That's the way to deal with it. Because if we don't deal with it that way, we'll start to blame those things and say, it's the modes of nature. Krishna says, you're helpless in the modes of nature. You're never helpless. Even if you're a drug addict, you're never helpless, because you can always go to a program You are helpless, but you have the will to go to the program to get help. So that's the best advice I could give on that. And you can all determine how to do that. I was thinking a few weeks ago, well, periodically I have this thought. When I look at my past conditioning, I think, you know, I wish I didn't have all that. You ever think, like, after you become a devotee, oh, and you look back, I wish I hadn't done all those 10 zillion things I did between the age of 15 and 20, you know, or whatever. I became a devotee at the age of 15, and that point where my brain started to act like an adult. I wish I hadn't done all those things. Well, of course, we already did them, so it's okay to lament, but we did it, and we're conditioned by it. There's no question. You know, all the songs you heard growing up, they're all in there. You'll never forget them. When you're 99, you're still going to be singing those songs. The nursery rhyme, twinkle, twinkle, little star. You're going to be, you know, that, and all the rock and roll songs, and I don't know all your favorite songs. They'll all be in there. And some situation's going to come, and the song's going to come, and you're going to remember the party you're at when you first heard the song, and the girl you met, and all the drugs you were taking. You know, it's like, why? You know, is there a pill to give me amnesia? That would, like, just forget everything except the good things. So I think we all think like this. Well, it'd be so much easier if that wasn't there. You know, like, that's all traffic on the highways. Like, there's so much traffic on this highway back to Godhead. I wish I was on a road, you know, where there was no traffic. Well, it's too late now. You're on the road with traffic, right? So then I had this thought, rather than this depressing thought of, like, am I ever going to get over this? Am I ever going to be purified? Is this always going to bother me? And I had another thought, and the thought was, Mahatma, give yourself a pat on the back. You're still a devotee in spite of that. So this is a totally different way of looking at it. And then right after I was thinking about it, I heard this quote from Prabhupada when he was told about a devotee who was addicted to pot, and he would give it up and go back and give it up and go back, and good sadhana, smoke pot, good sadhana. And Prabhupada heard, and Prabhupada's response was to glorify him and said, just see how he's struggling. So it confirmed what I was thinking. Like, you know, instead of thinking, I'm so unfortunate, you know, I have this one friend that I attribute to most of my problems, material problems to, because he introduced me to things I shouldn't have been, and he was my best friend. It's like, why did Krishna make that person my best friend? It's like, if he were not my best friend, I would have been a sannyasi at 19 and no problems, you know. But rather than think like that, which is of course useless thinking, I was thinking, give yourself a pat on the back. In spite of having that friend and all the stuff he taught you and did together, you're still a devotee in spite of it. So that's the glorious part. So that's where we want to put our energy. I'm supposed to start a class at 9 o'clock. Can I set my computer up while we're talking?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that on that point.
I have a question.
I could give a
20 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like on that point of having done so many things before becoming a devotee. I also did a lot of things before I became a devotee. But now whenever some thoughts, like some Maya thoughts come in my mind, like, oh, you might be happy if this, if that. And then I can tell myself, no, you did all that and you weren't happy. So just forget it. Mm-hmm. Like everything that you thought anything that anyone might think could make a human being happy, you've done before you became a devotee, and it didn't work. So like, just why would you try it again? So chewing the shoe.
That's the upside. We have to pay. Sometimes we have to pay the downside price to get the upside. But I think it's Krishna's arrangement, because if we didn't have that, maybe we wouldn't be here. We'd still be hankering. Yes.
Hare Krishna. So as we were just speaking based on Narottam's question, I was thinking like how we struggle because it's purifying us, and by this purification we can come closer to Krishna. So in this way, yes, Krishna is happy, but I just have a hard time conceptualizing what you said, that Krishna likes to see us struggle. So could you maybe elaborate on that?
Well, let's say your father was sick and you had to take care of him, but you were also sick and you were taking care of him at the same time. He doesn't like it that you're sick, but the fact that you sacrificed your own health to take care of him, he's like, wow. So you don't want to get up in the morning, you don't want to chant, you want to go party, you want to do whatever, and you don't. And Krishna's looking at that. It's my girl. So he knows you're struggling. And in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the beautiful conversation of the devotee going back to Godhead. The devotee going back to Godhead, and Krishna, when Krishna meets him, Krishna tells him, I know all the struggles you went through to get here. So Krishna appreciates the struggles. So
He appreciates the struggles because we're still not.
yeah, he doesn't go, oh, Kumari, look at her suffering like a dog. That makes me so happy. Not like that. It's like, look at Kumari. Despite her mind telling her, don't do this or do that, she's remaining faith and chaste. She won't give up my service. Krishna House. Oh, I was looking for my microphone. Here it is.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Yeah.
I read in this book when I was incarcerated called The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant. And Immanuel Kant says struggle is the law of growth. So
Yes.
in order for us to grow further, we have to struggle some way, you know what I mean? And the struggle could be anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
struggles come from all different walks of life.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will struggle. And if we don't, we won't grow. We'll just stay or we'll degrade. Correct? Huh. Oh, Trish. Dying to ask.
I know I wanted a long answer, but I'm gonna have to have
Well,
a
if it
4-minute
relates
answer.
to what I'm doing, it relates to Guru Tattva. Talk about it.
Oh, it could. I don't know, maybe. My question was,
Where's Radha Krishna? Can you call her and ask her what channel I should I go on Zoom on my normal channel or another channel? Okay, go ahead.
well, what is the importance, if any, of analyzing our deep motivations for acting, even if our actions seem like they're correct, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but my motivations are not? Is there any importance to analyzing the motivations? And what can be done about that?
How do I get online? Which one? KA Sadhu 5. My computer doesn't do 5G. What's the stronger? Doesn't like 5G. This is such a good question. Got 3 hours?
I wish, that's what I wanted.
Okay, well, wait, I can actually answer it very quickly.
He says use the second account.
Okay. So I'm going to multitask right. Oh, and then I need I need them not for my second account, but for the new meeting. I'm going to log into. What's the meeting number?
What's the meeting? Go there. History. So is it personal? Which personal meeting is it?
My meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 I'm logged in on my other account, and I see my meeting 890-683. Oh, you send me my email. Okay. I'll give it. Yeah. I want to tell you something. You know the story about this